Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing with you these two Spellbinders sets. These are cling stamps from their Stephanie Lowe collection, Just Add Color. So I've already made some cards with these stamp sets. Here I've stamped out that floral image and then I fussy cut some of the leaves several times to add a few more of those to my card. Here I've also stamped out that big floral, and then I've also drawn in my own spider web just to kind of create my own custom background. So that's using this first stamp set, but I'm going to be using this one today. These are the Peonies Blossoms stamp set, and I'm just going to be building a card in a similar style, but it has a totally different look when I'm done with it. So I'm just grabbing my stamps out of my package, and I'm going to be putting them into my MISTI so I can stamp them out several times. Now when you are using a cling stamp, a rubber cling stamp like I'm doing today, just remember to take that foam piece out of the back of your MISTI so it will allow for extra room when you're stamping. I'm using my Brutus Monroe detail ink. I love this ink if I'm going to be doing any kind of coloring because it's permanent when dry, whether you use alcohol markers or watercolors or any kind of medium. So even if I haven't decided how I want to color my images yet, I grab this ink because I know I'll be safe with whatever medium I choose. So I do go ahead and I stamp out these images several times just to make sure I have a nice black line, black crisp stamping. And I'm also filling up my whole page because I want to stamp these out and then fussy cut them and arrange them on the front of my card. So I'm trying to fit as many as I can on this little piece of cardstock here. Like I said, I do stamp these out probably 2 or 3 times each. The rubber stamps do stamp really well. You get a really good impression the first time, but I just like that really crisp black stamping, so I like to stamp it several times. I'm using a Heidi Swapp stencil, and I don't even remember what the stencil is called. I think it's Confetti or something like that. I've had it in my stash for a long time, but I love those spots on the top of those confetti spots. So I'm going to go ahead and put my cardstock here. I'm taping it from the back, and that way if I peel off that tape, and even if it tears a little bit of my cardstock, I should still be okay because it'll be on the back. That's my theory anyway. So I'm showing you here what it looks like when I've embossed over this stencil. And embossing over a stencil is actually really easy to do, and it's something that you can do with your stencils to give you a little bit more bang for your buck. So I would just grab my embossing ink if I were embossing and then just tap it on with a foam blender tool, just like you would when you're blending. I would just gently tap it on, not brush. And that's kind of what I did on this card. Now, I did not emboss on that one. I used my Nuvo Dream Drops, and I'm going to be doing that again for this card. Now, the color that I'm using is Cloud 9, which is this whitish color, but it has a pink shimmer to it. So you're not going to see it as bold as some of the other colors, but it's going to add a nice little shimmer to my background. Now you can apply these Nuvo drops over a stencil in several ways. I'm just adding it straight to my palette knife and then scraping it on. But you can also squirt a little bit right onto your stencil and scrape it that way. Like I said, I'm using a palette knife, but if you don't have a palette knife, just use like an old credit card or something that you can easily scrape these drops with. I just like to add a little bit to my knife and just keep going over all of these stencil dots until I see that they're all filled, and I think it's a nice smooth application. Now my stencil is very well loved, as you can see. It's dirty, and I should have cleaned it a little bit better because I did get a few of those black specks into my Nuvo drops from my stencil. That was actually versifying black ink that I used on one of my other cards. And I'm really lazy, I'll tell you. I'm really lazy at cleaning off my stencils and all of my supplies. And that's probably a bad habit because you want your stencils to be clean. But it worked okay. You can't really see the black specks in there very well, so I just went with it. But it is really easy to clean off your palette knife and your stencil with those Nuvo drops if you just go clean it right away with a baby wipe. That's what I would recommend. So I'm going to go in and I'm actually doing some very, very light coloring on these flowers. I'm just using one shade of pink like I'm doing here, and then I'm actually just doing a little bit of shading on the flowers' leaves with some very light gray. And that's all the coloring that I'm going to do. I'm keeping it really simple so I can make a quick, pretty card. And the fussy cutting's actually going to take longer than the coloring did. So here's my flowers once they're all colored. Just a little bit of gray and a little bit of pink, and I think they're just so pretty anyway, just the image, that even not adding a whole lot of color, they still stand out. So I'm taking my card base. I'm trying to be careful because my Nuvo drops are not 100% dry. I mean, they're dry enough to work with, but they're still a little bit soft. I don't want to squish them too much. But I am kind of trimming off a little bit of this panel. I'm trimming off 1/4 inch on each side, so it's slightly smaller than my A2 size card base. And that way I can just mat it on top of my card base and have a nice little border around the edges. And I like to line it up after I've cut it down just to make sure that it fits nicely. So I've gone ahead and I've already mapped out where I want to put all these flowers, and I took a picture with my phone. I think that this is just a really nice way to kind of get your placement down the way you want it to. And I've seen a few other YouTubers do this trick too. So I think it's a really helpful tool to use if you kind of struggle with placement like I do sometimes. So I'm just making sure all of my flowers are where I want them. I just went ahead, fussy cut them all out, and I'm just trying to make a nice little curve of those flowers. I'm actually moving them over a little bit more than I had originally planned because I'm trying to make room for my sentiment. So I'm just kind of making sure that I have them where I want them. And now I'm going to grab my sentiment. This sentiment is actually another cling stamp from a Fun Stampers Journey stamp set that I used a little while ago. This Have a Beautiful Day stamp I thought went really well with the flowers, and I just liked the shape of the sentiment. I thought it worked well with the whole layout. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm using that. Now I'm putting my card front into my MISTI, and these flowers are not adhered down yet. They're just sitting on my paper, but I'm going to leave them there because I want to make sure that I have my sentiment exactly where I want it and that it's going to look nice with these flowers. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my sentiment. Now I had thought about doing it in my VersaFine Black Onyx ink, but I didn't want it to be too black since the coloring on this card is so light. I actually went with my Brutus Monroe Sidewalk Surface ink, which is a gray. It would be a lighter gray than what you see here, but like my stencils, I don't clean my stamps either, and so there was a little bit of that VersaFine Black Onyx ink on my stamp as well, so it worked, but I would definitely say I need to work on cleaning my supplies. Anyway, moving on. So I have my sentiment stamped out, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere down all of my flowers. I'm putting this big flower, popping it up on some foam adhesive so that can be kind of the focal point of this card. And then I'm just going to glue the rest down with a little bit of liquid adhesive. So I'm just placing this big flower where I want it to go. I just need to move that one out of the way a little bit so that it doesn't get stuck under that foam adhesive. I want to make sure I get all of these flowers adhered right where they need to go. Just kind of playing around with the placement, making sure it's where I want it to go. And then the rest of these flowers, I'm just taking my Brutus Monroe craft glue with my fine tip applicator and just gluing them down with this glue. Now this glue does give you a little bit of wiggle room before it dries, which is nice when you're doing an arrangement because then you can make sure that you put it right where you want it to go. So all of my other images I have glued down with this craft glue. And this image here wasn't really wanting to stick where the leaves were, and I didn't want to hold it for a while, so I just put my Teflon bulb folder over it and held it while I glued down everything else, and that seemed to work okay. So I'm taking the front of my card base and I'm putting some foam adhesive on the back, and I'm going to pop it up onto my card. Now this Brutus Monroe foam tape is really thick and it's very super sticky. So if you have problems with the backing, like I know some people do, I think I found the quickest way to release that backing paper is to take a pokey tool or a craft knife or something and just kind of really quickly try to rip up that backing paper and then pull it off. You have to make sure that you're not getting any of that foam adhesive with the backing paper, because if you're pulling on the foam adhesive, it's just going to stretch and you're not going to get that paper off. So just make sure that you're really pulling on the paper and not the foam. So I have all of that backing paper off of my foam tape, and I'm just going to adhere my card front to my base. And since I went ahead and I trimmed it down, I have that nice little matted border around the outside. So to finish off my card, I'm taking a sequin mix, and this is from Dress My Craft. And I'm just picking out some of these clear pinkish sequins and just arranging them around my flowers. And then I'm going to go ahead and glue them down using my Brutus Monroe craft glue again. This craft glue is great for the images like I used earlier, but it's also great for sequins. And I really love it with that fine tip applicator, so I can just put a little tiny dab of glue where I need it to go and then just glue down my sequins. So I'm just trying to pick out the sequins I want from my sequin mix, and then I'm just going to arrange them and glue them down. So I'm just finishing off my sequins, and that's going to be the card for today. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for taking a look at these Spellbinders stamp sets. I think they're absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to have some more info on my blog as well as links to any of the products. I'll also have links down below if you want to check out these stamps. Otherwise, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you have a nice day, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye!